My name is Natalia Reyes. I'm 47 years old, and until yesterday I was the executive client director at Blackwood and Asher, a leading digital transformation consultancy in San Francisco. I'd been with the company for 14 years. 14. Through tech bubbles, market crashes, 3 CEOs, and 2 complete brand overhauls. I wasn't just another employee ID in the system. I was part of the foundation. The troubleshooter they called when implementations were failing, the steady voice that kept enterprise clients from walking away when projects hit turbulence. Yesterday morning I walked into the executive conference room expecting congratulations, maybe even a small toast. Instead, I found my boss, Taylor Winters, seated at the opposite end of the glass table, a thin manila folder placed meticulously in front of him. "Natalia," he said, standing as I entered. His tone was artificially gentle, uncomfortably soft. The way someone speaks to you right before delivering terrible news. "Thanks for coming in early. I had just rescued a $40 million implementation contract. For exhausting weeks of late nights, back and forth flights between San Francisco and Austin. Guiding a wavering client after their internal IT leadership change nearly collapsed our largest digital transformation project to date. My interventions hadn't merely saved the contract. It strengthened the relationship at a critical juncture. Every executive in our C-suite knew what I'd accomplished. So when I took my seat and noticed how Taylor's eyes deliberately avoided mine, I sensed the shift. A strange tension in the air. The subtle reordering of something I couldn't yet identify. He clasped his hands together. "Your contributions have been extraordinary. Truly. But we're pivoting toward more innovative and tech-forward leadership." The words barely registered. "I'm sorry," I asked. Not because I hadn't heard him clearly, but because the phrase sounded so rehearsed. It sounded like dialogue from a poorly scripted corporate podcast. Taylor pushed the folder across the sleek surface. "We're reorganizing the leadership structure. The executive team wants a more agile approach, more emphasis on emerging technologies. You've been an incredible asset to Blackwood and Asher, Natalia, but it's time for us to explore new directions." I opened the folder deliberately, reading the legal terminology through a calculated calm. I wouldn't give him the satisfaction of seeing my surprise. Separation agreement. Severance details. Non-disclosure provisions. I looked up. Effective immediately. He nodded. "You'll receive your quarterly performance bonus in full and, of course, we'll ensure a respectful transition." Respectful. As if dismissing someone after 14 years of dedicated service could ever be considered respectful. I didn't cry. I didn't raise my voice or demand justification. I smiled, a small measured expression. "Understood," I said evenly and extended my hand. Taylor seemed visibly relieved as we shook hands, as though he'd been expecting an emotional scene. But I wasn't angry. Not yet. Because in that moment, what swept through me wasn't rage. It was clear. A cold, precise kind of clarity. The kind that emerges when long-held illusions finally shatter. He had no idea. Not yet. He couldn't imagine how interesting the next few days would be. I packed my office methodically, deliberately. Not because I needed the time, but because I wanted to absorb every moment. I wanted to observe how people reacted when they realized I was leaving. Not with pity, but with genuine confusion. No official announcement had been made. Most assumed I was heading to a client site. Several colleagues waved casually as they passed. Only one person actually stopped to ask questions. "Taking some time off?" my executive assistant Marco asked, noticing the box in my hands. "Something like that," I replied. I paused briefly at the window where I'd spent countless evenings. From this vantage point, you could see the bay, the bridge, the endless flow of innovation and commerce. I'd worked through holidays in this office, missed my daughter's recitals, and stayed during earthquake warnings. All for what? Professional respect. Company loyalty. Evidently, those currencies weren't valued at Blackwood and Asher anymore. I took one final look at the whiteboard in my office. Notes from yesterday's call with our most valuable client, Vertex Systems. The same client I had just saved with an implementation strategy Taylor had initially called too resource-intensive. The client whose CEO had personally thanked me during a video call last night and mentioned flying into San Francisco next week to discuss extending our contract. He wasn't aware of my termination yet. That was my advantage. I walked out without ceremony. No farewell email, no awkward gathering around a cake. Just a quiet exit with a phone full of contacts I'd built through years of dedication. At home that evening, I opened a bottle of Pinot Noir and sat with my laptop. I reviewed my employment contract carefully. The non-compete clause existed, but was limited in scope. 6 months and only applicable if I resign voluntarily. Taylor had signed my termination papers. That distinction was critically important. I accessed my personal cloud storage, copies of the presentations, the integration frameworks, the solutions I'd developed on weekends to save that $40 million contract. Not company property. Just concepts, methodologies, approaches they had dismissed until they saw them succeed. Then I checked my messages. There it was, an email from Vertex's Chief Technology Officer. Looking forward to meeting next Thursday. Eager to discuss expanding our partnership. Your strategic guidance has been transformative for our digital roadmap. Thank you again. I didn't reply. Not immediately. I had other priorities to address first. Like ensuring tomorrow becomes memorable. I woke the next morning before my alarm would have sounded. Even though I hadn't set one. Force of habit. My body still expected morning strategy calls, commute traffic, a calendar packed with client meetings. But my home felt different now. Not like a temporary resting place between workdays, but like a command center. I made coffee slowly, intentionally. For the first time in years, I wasn't rushing. No press suit, no laptop bag by the door. No constant stream of Slack notifications. Just me, my kitchen with its morning sunlight, and a phone that hadn't stopped buzzing since I left the office yesterday. I scrolled through the notifications, 8 LinkedIn messages from former colleagues, 4 emails from clients. One of them Vertex. A voicemail from Elena, one of our alliance directors. Heard something happened. Please call me when you can. They were confused because firing someone who had just secured your largest client made no logical business sense. Unless you didn't understand what she actually contributed. I sat down with my journal. The one I never kept at the office. The one containing every client detail, side conversation, and internal promise no one else had documented. Over 14 years, I hadn't just managed accounts. I had built trust. I knew which CIOs were planning career moves, which procurement teams had specific implementation requirements, who needed morning status reports and who expected evening debriefs. I wasn't just a consultant. I was the invisible thread connecting everything. And they had cut me loose like excess overhead. They thought my value ended with that folder Taylor slid across the table. They were profoundly mistaken. At 9 a.m. sharp, I called Vertex Systems. Not the main switchboard, not the customer service line. I called the direct number of James Chen, the Chief Technology Officer who had emailed me about next week's meeting. He answered on the second ring. Natalia, are we still good for Thursday? There it was. The opportunity. I wanted to discuss that with you, I said calmly. As of yesterday, I'm no longer with Blackwood and Asher. Silence filled the line. The kind where you can almost hear someone's eyebrows rising in disbelief. Wait, what? I was let go, I explained, maintaining a neutral tone. The firm is changing direction. They're emphasizing younger talent, different technology approaches. I wanted you to hear it directly from me. That's absolutely unbelievable, he responded. You're the only reason we didn't terminate the contract after the initial implementation problems. You salvaged everything. I appreciate that, James. Truly. What happens now? Who's taking over your client portfolio? I assume Taylor will contact you. Or someone from their reorganized leadership team. I don't have visibility into that anymore. He paused again. Natalia, let me ask you something. Are you staying in the industry? Yes, I confirmed without hesitation. I'm just not certain about my next steps yet. I'd like to talk. Not about Thursday's meeting. About something different. Something longer term. Can you meet today? A smile slowly formed. Absolutely. We met at a quiet cafe in the financial district. No corporate attire, no presentation decks. Just 2 professionals with years of context between them. He got straight to the point. We've been considering bringing some of our strategic technology guidance in-house, James said. Consulting fees are astronomical and honestly, the only person at Blackwood we've consistently relied on was you. Have you considered independent consulting? That phrase hung in the air between us. Independent. For 14 years, I'd operated essentially as an independent practice under someone else's banner. I had designed frameworks, saved implementations, and maintained relationships they couldn't replicate. And they let me go because I didn't fit their new technology vision. I met James's eyes directly. If I were to establish an independent practice, would Vertex consider a direct advisory arrangement? He didn't hesitate. Draft a proposal. Let's make it happen. That evening, I opened my laptop and began building something I hadn't considered in years. My own identity, my own service offerings, my own professional presence beyond just being someone who worked for a firm. I registered an LLC, scheduled a meeting with a business lawyer I'd met through a client event years ago. She owed me for connecting her with 2 major clients. I called Marco, my former assistant, and asked if he would consider part-time contract work. His answer? Name the start date. By 9 p.m., I had established a name, a legal structure, and a strategic plan. I wasn't just going to land on my feet. I was going to build something Taylor would never understand because what I possessed wasn't tied to Blackwood and Asher's brand or their polished slide templates. It was me. My reputation, my results, my relationships. Clients didn't follow logos or color schemes. They followed trust. And tomorrow, that trust would begin to migrate. Contract by contract. Relationship by relationship. The morning light streamed through my windows with remarkable clarity. Sharp, golden, uncompromising. I sat at my home office desk with fresh coffee and a notepad filled with names. Not just names, but relationships, conversations spanning years, forged in crisis management calls, technical problem-solving sessions, and implementation recoveries that had nothing to do with billable hours. I wasn't rushing. Each conversation deserved attention. Each needed to feel intentional, not desperate. My first call wasn't to a client. It was to someone who understood how the game worked. Someone who had once been a mentor but had long since become a friend. Natalia, said Carmen Rodriguez. Her voice is warm but alert. I heard through industry channels. Taylor's making some interesting moves. That's one way to describe it, I replied. He terminated my position. Said the firm needs more tech-forward leadership. There was a pause. He actually said that verbatim? She sighed audibly. Remarkable. You realize he's just handed you an incredible opportunity, right? I do. I'm starting my own consultancy, I told her. Nothing elaborate initially, but Vertex has already expressed interest. They want to be my first client. Carmen laughed. Of course they do. You practically rebuilt their entire digital infrastructure. What do you need from me? Advice? And eventually referrals. But right now, just this, when people start asking where I've landed, what would you say? I'd say Blackwood and Asher just lit a fuse that's going to burn through their client list like wildfire, she said. I'll vouch for you, Natalia. Whenever, wherever needed. The conversation centered around me. It reminded me that my career hadn't been built on corporate politics or favoritism. It had been built on results and trust. I ended the call, took a deep breath, and dialed my first client. It was Miguel Santos from Prism Data Partners. I'd managed their relationship for 9 years, guided their first cloud migration, helped them navigate a major security incident, and recently advised them through their European expansion. He answered immediately. Natalia, I was just about to call you. We have that integration review coming up. Still on for Monday. I steadied myself. That's actually why I'm calling. I'm no longer with Blackwood and Asher. Another moment of silence. Hold on, what? What happened? Effective yesterday. Leadership reorganization. My position was eliminated. Miguel sounded genuinely stunned. Natalia, that's incomprehensible. You've been our strategic advisor for years. You know our entire technology landscape. I wanted to tell you personally before the company did. I don't know who will be taking over your account. Whoever it is, they won't know what you know. This creates serious complications for us. There is one thing I should mention, I added. I'm starting an independent consulting practice. Specialized, high-touch, selective. You're taking clients? Only those whose vision I believe in. He didn't miss a beat. Send me a proposal by tomorrow. By the end of the day, I'd conducted 8 more conversations, each one a deliberate discussion. Each met with identical reactions. Surprise, concern, and then interest. They weren't just shocked I was gone. They were shocked the firm had let me go without a transition plan because there was no plan. Blackwood and Asher hadn't just removed me from projects. They'd severed the relationships those projects depended on. And now, quietly and professionally, I was reclaiming what they had discarded. That evening, I received a text from Marco, my former assistant. Internal chaos is escalating. Elena says Taylor is scrambling. Apparently, 4 clients have already requested new relationship managers. 2 have indicated they're reevaluating their contracts entirely. I didn't respond immediately. I just contemplated the message, letting it sink in. The wheels were turning faster than I had anticipated. I poured another glass of wine and reopened my laptop. I had engaged a designer creating a basic brand identity. Nothing elaborate needed. Just something clean, professional, trustworthy. Rhea Strategic Technology Advisors. Simple, elegant, direct. I set up a scheduling system, drafted my first confidentiality agreement, customized a service proposal template. I wasn't just collecting clients. I was building the foundation for something sustainable, something lasting. And when I checked my inbox, I saw a message from someone I hadn't expected to hear from so quickly. Subject line, your departure. From James Chin, Vertex Systems. Natalia, just spoke with Taylor. He told me Andrea will be our new point of contact. I explained we'll need to reconsider that arrangement. Let's talk tomorrow. I read the message twice. Andrea, the 29-year-old associate consultant Taylor had once referred to as digitally native, the one I had personally guided through her first major client implementation. Taylor had no idea what he had just triggered. Tomorrow would bring clarity. By Thursday morning, the consequences had already begun. 4 voicemails, 6 emails, 1 cryptic LinkedIn message from a colleague still at Blackwood and Asher. Whatever started this, they're panicking here. Are you okay? I was better than okay. Vertex Systems had requested a pause on all active work streams. Prism Data had already signed a preliminary letter of intent with my new firm, and 3 smaller clients had reached out directly, saying they preferred to work with the person they actually trusted. This wasn't rebellion. It was a quiet migration, one relationship at a time. And it was only the beginning. At 10 a.m., I met James from Vertex at their downtown headquarters. Not as a vendor, not as a representative of Blackwood and Asher, but as myself. He escorted me into a private meeting room, closed the door behind us, and crossed his arms. So they actually terminated you? I nodded. After everything you accomplished with our global platform implementation, apparently I'm not tech-forward enough for their new direction, I stated evenly. James sat across from me and shook his head in disbelief. They sent us Andrea. She didn't even know which cloud infrastructure we're using. She showed up with last quarter's metrics and called our Chief Innovation Officer David. His name is Daniel. I nearly winced. That was the kind of mistake you don't recover from in client relationships. I'm not here to sell you anything, James, I said. I just wanted to be transparent. I've started something new. Small, high-touch, focused on established clients who value strategic guidance over buzzwords. He leaned forward. How soon can you start? By noon, we had outlined the structure of a 6-month strategic advisory agreement. Nothing aggressive, just a clean transition from the firm and into something more direct, more efficient. They wanted continuity. I was offering exactly that without bureaucracy, without delays, with the same level of attention they had come to expect. As I was leaving the building, James stopped me at the elevator. You know this is going to cause problems. I know, I replied, but I didn't create them. I'm just responding appropriately. He gave me a knowing nod. For what it's worth, they severely underestimated you. That part one already knew. Back at home, I opened my laptop to find 2 new messages. One from Blackwood and Asher's legal department. Subject line, reminder regarding confidentiality obligations. Please be advised that your former employment agreement includes standard confidentiality provisions. Any outreach to current clients must remain in accordance with these terms. It was intentionally vague, designed to intimidate. The second message was from Andrea herself. Subject line, quick question. Hi, Natalia. Just wondering if you remember what framework you use for Vertex's quarterly technology assessment? I can't find it in the shared drive. Any help appreciated? I stared at the message. This wasn't her fault. Not really. She was thrust into a role she wasn't ready for. All in the name of being tech-forward. Still, I didn't respond. There was nothing I could say that wouldn't become a teaching moment someone else should have provided. I closed my inbox and texted Marco instead. Let's prepare for 2 new client onboardings this week. I'll connect you with Vertex and Prism tomorrow. Already on it, he responded. Also heard from Elena again. Taylor's losing it. Clients are demanding explanations. Daniel asked why your name isn't on any recent implementation documents. I smiled. That question would haunt them for some time. Later that afternoon, I walked through Golden Gate Park to clear my mind. The bay was calm. The city hummed around me, full of people moving through their routines, unaware that one small shift was reverberating through a corporate office not far from here. At 4:17 p.m., my phone rang. Unknown number. Natalia Reyes, I answered with measured poise. Natalia, it's Michael Blackwood, CEO at Blackwood and Asher. I raised an eyebrow. Hello, Michael. How can I help you? We've had some client concerns. Several transitions aren't going as smoothly as expected. I wanted to see if you'd consider a consulting arrangement to help support the handoffs. Just for a few weeks. I kept my tone polite neutral. Unfortunately, I'm already under contract with 4 former clients. It wouldn't be appropriate at this point. Natalia, we don't want this situation to escalate. It won't. As long as the firm respects my termination agreement and my professional rights under the contract we both signed. Another pause. I see, he said finally. Well, thank you for your time. I ended the call and sat on a bench overlooking the water. That was their first warning shot. The first attempt to regain control. But what they didn't understand was this. I hadn't burned any bridges. I had simply built a better one. And the clients were already crossing it. By Friday morning, I had secured 5 clients. Vertex Systems, Prism Data, Meridian Technologies, Level Up Solutions, and now Elysium Biotech. None had been solicited. None had been pressured. All had reached out after hearing the same question reverberating through the industry. What happened to Natalia Reyes? I didn't need to sell myself. I had simply responded when they called. Calmly, factually. Professionally. I'm no longer with Blackwood and Asher. I've established an independent consultancy. Yes, I'm open to continuing our work together. Simple truths. But inside Blackwood and Asher, those truths were causing chaos. That morning, Marco forwarded me another message from Elena. Subject line, internal update. Taylor called an emergency executive meeting this morning. At least 7 clients have paused renewals or requested new account managers. Legal is trying to determine if they can enforce the non-compete clause. But since you were terminated, there's significant confusion. Michael is not happy. Neither is the board. I leaned back in my chair and exhaled slowly. I wasn't looking to destroy the firm. I wasn't trying to make headlines, but I also wasn't going to apologize for being the very thing they underestimated, irreplaceable. At 11:30 a.m., I received a calendar invitation from Taylor Winters. Subject line, let's catch up. Just us. Time, 3 p.m. Location, Blackwood and Asher, Conference Room East. The audacity was breathtaking. I didn't accept. I didn't decline. Instead, I spent the next hour reviewing every section of my termination letter. Again, there it was in plain legal language. The company waives any non-compete enforcement in the event of involuntary termination. They had signed it. They had filed it. They had simply failed to read it carefully enough. At 1:12 p.m., my phone rang again. It was James from Vertex. Just a heads up, he said. Taylor reached out this morning, said you were creating confusion and that our contract might expose us to legal action. I asked him to put that in writing. He backpedaled pretty quickly after that. I smiled. Thanks for letting me know. No problem. Also, 2 colleagues at Quantum Systems are looking for strategic guidance. They were asking who's advising us now. Are you okay with me sharing your information? Absolutely, I replied. By 2:30 p.m., I was on a video call with Quantum Systems VP of Digital Transformation. They were restructuring and had just terminated their relationship with their previous consulting firm due to misalignment. We spoke for nearly an hour. She said she'd have a draft agreement by Monday. When I ended the call, I noticed I had a new voicemail. Taylor. I listened. Natalia, this is Taylor. I'd really appreciate a moment to speak today. Not about the past, but about alignment. There may be a way for us to move forward that benefits everyone. I deleted it because alignment was the word he used when he pushed me out, and now he wanted it back. At 4:05 p.m., Elena called me from her personal number. "Natalia," she said quickly. "You didn't hear this from me, but Innovate Capital withdrew their offer." That caught my attention. "Excuse me?" "The venture capital group that was courting Blackwood and Asher." It was confidential, but they'd been in discussions for months. They had conditions. Wanted to see strong client retention and continuity. With your departure and this fallout spreading, they pulled the term sheet this morning. I sat back stunned. "So that explains it," I whispered. "They never said it explicitly," Elena replied. "But yes, they were trying to make the firm look streamlined. Remove perceived complexity, consolidate leadership. You had too many direct client relationships. So they cut me loose," I said softly, assuming the clients would stay with the firm. "Exactly," she confirmed. "Except they didn't." That evening I made one final call to Michael Blackwood, the CEO who had warned me not to escalate. He answered on the second ring. "Natalia, I heard about Innovate Capital," I said. "Must have been a difficult conversation." A pause. "You don't have to do this," he said quietly. "I'm not doing anything you didn't orchestrate first," I replied. "You gambled. You lost. I just stepped aside and let it fall." He sighed. "You could come back. We could restructure." "No," I interrupted. "You had 14 years to value what I built, and you traded it for a younger face and a trendy perspective. It's done." He said nothing. I continued. "Tell Taylor I won't be at his 3 o'clock meeting. I have my own clients now. And unlike yours, they actually trust me." Then I hung up. 3 weeks after I was terminated, my name appeared on more client contracts than Blackwood and Asher's top 3 consultants combined. It didn't happen because I asked. It happened because clients chose, not from sympathy or protest, but because I delivered results. Because I answered texts after hours, remembered details that didn't fit into CRM systems, and ensured they never had to explain themselves twice. Trust doesn't come with a logo. It comes with consistency. And they finally understood the difference. By the second month, my LLC had grown faster than I had anticipated. Almost too quickly. Marco was now full-time, and I just brought on another project manager, Sophia. A brilliant, empathetic professional I'd mentored years ago who had left the corporate world 6 months earlier. We operated from a small co-working space in North Beach. No corner offices, no panoramic views. Just 3 workstations. Excellent coffee and quiet efficiency. Vertex renewed for a full year. Prism Data added a second project. Quantum signed a 6-month strategic engagement with verbal intent to expand. And the inquiries kept coming. Subject line, referral from James Chen. Subject line, are you currently accepting clients? Subject line, can we talk? Need someone I can trust. I declined more business than I accepted. Not from arrogance, but from intention. I wasn't building an empire. I was building something sustainable. Something of mine. Something they could never take from me again. Then one morning I opened LinkedIn and saw the announcement. Blackwood and Asher announces leadership transition. Taylor Winters will step down as managing partner, effective immediately. Interim leadership will be appointed as the firm undergoes restructuring following significant client departures. I stared at the screen for a long moment. Not with satisfaction, not with triumph. Just stillness. He was gone. Just like that. The man who told me I wasn't tech-forward enough for the firm. The man who thought he could replace trust with innovation buzzwords. The man who handed me a folder across that polished table, assuming I'd walk away quietly and disappear into irrelevance. He never saw it coming because people like Taylor never do. That afternoon, I received an envelope by courier. No return address. Inside was a single handwritten note. Natalia, you were right. They weren't just your clients. They were your relationships. And I never understood the difference. I hope you built something better than we ever did. You already have. Taylor. I folded the note once and placed it in my drawer. Not out of sentimentality, but closure. Some lessons don't need a response. 3 days later, I stood at a podium at the Women in Technology Leadership Summit, a conference I had once only attended from the audience. Now I was the closing speaker. The topic, when value isn't recognized and why it doesn't matter. I told the story plainly. No bitterness, no revenge narrative, just facts. I spoke about what happens when companies chase innovation over impact, when they measure worth by age instead of insight, when they trade consistency for buzzwords. I ended with this. You may one day find yourself across the table from someone who no longer sees your value. Don't panic. Don't plead. Smile. Shake their hand and walk out with everything they never knew you built. Your reputation, your relationships, your principles. Because some things aren't printed on business cards. They're etched in people's trust. The applause was lengthy, standing even. But what mattered more was what happened after. 8 women approached me with visible emotion to request mentorship. One was planning her exit from a firm that had been undervaluing her for years. Another offered to invest if I ever considered scaling, and one, a composed woman in her 50s, simply said, "Thank you. I needed that." I nodded. So did I. That night, back in my apartment, I poured a glass of Cabernet and watched the city lights through the window. Same skyline, same streets. But everything had changed. Not because I had one, but because I no longer needed to. I had outgrown the rooms that once tried to diminish me. And the people who had dismissed me now watched from the sidelines, trying to understand how they lost so much by letting go of just one person. I picked up the framed quote Marco had given me the day I signed my 8th client. The best revenge is becoming exactly what they said you never could. I placed it on the shelf behind my desk. Not as a warning, but as a reminder, because the world doesn't reward noise. It rewards value. And I was finally in a place where mine would never be questioned again.